Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bumping the night. On tonight's episode, a man dealing with past trauma reflects on his encounter with an evil babysitter. So, no matter what you do, don't hire Mrs. Wren.
I've never liked telling this story, not because I'm scared people won't believe me, but because I'm scared they will. It happened when I was 10. My parents had finally decided to take a real vacation. One of those save-your-marriage trips to the Bahamas that involved rum, boat rides, and definitely not their only child. They left me with a babysitter. Her name was Mrs. Wren. The name sounds sweet, right? Like a children's book character. But even now, nearly 2 decades later, her name still makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I remember the first time I saw her. I was standing in the hallway, peeking between the balusters, while my mom opened the front door. And there she was, Mrs. Wren, mid-40s maybe. Tall, too tall, with wiry limbs and long gray hair, twisted into a braid that swung down her back like a rope. She wore this faded yellow cardigan and a wide-brimmed hat, even though it was nighttime. When she smiled, it looked wrong. Too many teeth, gums pale and tight, like a taxidermy smile. My mom said, "He's shy, but he's a good boy." And Mrs. Wren said, "I know. I've read all about him." That line stuck with me. Read all about me like I was homework. Still, my parents left and she moved in. Her suitcase was huge. I remember that clearly. It looked old, worn leather with tarnished brass buckles. It thudded when she rolled it up the stairs. I remember wondering why it smelled like wet dirt and copper. That night, I tried not to talk to her. I ate my mac and cheese in silence. She sat across from me at the table watching, not eating, just smiling. "You're a very special boy," she said, "and I can see it. You've got the light in you. Most kids don't. They're shadows, empty, but not you." I didn't answer. She tapped her nails on the table. "You know, I used to be a nurse," she said, "in the special wards, places with locks on the outside. Have you ever been inside a locked room?" I said no. She smiled wider. "You will." That night, I locked my bedroom door. My parents never came back. I mean, they did eventually, but something happened in those 7 days that still haunts every moment of my adult life. Because on the second night, things started changing. I woke up to the sound of whispering. Not coming from the hallway, from inside my closet. I thought I was dreaming at first. But when I turned over, I saw something that made my stomach knot up. Mrs. Wren, sitting in the rocking chair at the corner of my room, in the dark, rocking slowly and whispering into a doll's ear. It wasn't my doll. It was made of cloth and buttons, with its head tilted too far to the left. I asked her what she was doing. She said, "The doll doesn't sleep well unless I tell it bedtime stories." She stood up, walked to the closet, opened the door, and placed the doll inside. When she turned back to me, her face was blank. "No one leaves this room after dark," she said. "Not unless they want the man in the walls to find them." She shut the closet and left. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I checked the closet. The doll was gone, no trace. But my closet smelled like dirt and rust. I tried calling my parents, no answer. Tried emailing, nothing. I even tried asking the neighbors if I could stay over. Mrs. Wren stopped me before I got to the edge of the driveway. She stood there, arms folded, eyes hard. "You're not allowed outside," she said. "The birds would see." The birds? What the hell was that supposed to mean? That day, she made me sit in the living room and read from a book I'd never seen before. It had no title, just a black leather cover with scratchy white symbols on it. She said it was important I learn the words. Every page was written in a language I didn't understand, but the letters made my eyes burn and my nose bleed. She made me read it out loud. Each time I did, I heard something moving in the walls, scraping, sniffing. Then one night, I broke the rule. I left my room after dark. I'd been hearing something in the hallway, not footsteps, creaking, like someone dragging a bag of meat across the floor. I opened my door just a crack, saw her, Mrs. Wren, kneeling in front of the attic door, drawing on the wall with her finger. Except the lines she was drawing weren't staying. They were glowing, pale green, pulsing, and her voice, it wasn't English. She was chanting. I backed away, heart pounding. And that's when I saw the doll again. It was sitting on the stairs, but it wasn't the same. It had hair now, my hair, and its button eyes had been replaced with something wet. Human. It had blinked. I ran back into my room and slammed the door. Locked it. Blocked it with a chair. I didn't sleep. In the morning, the doll was gone, and Mrs. Wren made pancakes, like nothing had happened. But I knew I had to get out. So I tried something else. I faked a stomach. Said I needed to go to the hospital. She didn't even blink. Your parents said not to take you anywhere, she said. They said you needed discipline. She gave me a glass of milk, told me to drink it. I pretended to. Poured it into the plant when she wasn't looking. The plant died instantly. I started hiding food, avoiding drinks, and that's when things got worse. She stopped talking, stopped smiling, but every night, the whispers came back. From the closet, from the vents, from under the bed. Sometimes I'd wake up with new scratches on my arms. Sometimes I'd find little bones under my pillow. But the worst was Thursday night. I was lying in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. And I heard my mom's voice, calling me from the hallway. "Sweetie, come here. It's time to go. We're back." I ran to the door, flung it open, and saw my mom standing there, smiling, but something was wrong. Her eyes were solid black, and her fingers were too long. When she stepped into the light, her skin melted off her face like wax. And underneath was Mrs. Wren, laughing. I slammed the door, screamed until I passed out. When I woke up, there were marks burned into the wall, symbols glowing. And in the corner of the room, a second doll. This one had my shirt on, and teeth, real human teeth. That was the breaking point. I decided to do something stupid. I waited until she went into the basement, which she always locked from the inside. Then I grabbed her giant leather suitcase. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it had answers. Maybe I thought it was her weakness. But the moment I opened it, I screamed. Inside were dozens of dolls, all hand-stitched, all lifelike, all whimpering. And each one had a tag tied around its neck with a name and an address and a birthday. One of them was mine. Another was my mom's. Another was a kid from my school who'd gone missing the year before. I dropped the suitcase, ran for the front door. Mrs. Wren was already standing there, not smiling anymore. Her face was gone, just skin pulled tight over muscle. No eyes, no nose, just teeth. Rows and rows of teeth. She opened her mouth wider than a person should be able to, and from inside it, I heard my mother's voice. "You'll never leave this house. When you see your babysitter's mouth open wider than humanly possible, and your mother's voice comes out of it, you stop thinking in words. You stop thinking altogether." I turned and ran, not toward the stairs, not toward my room, just away. But the house was wrong. The hallway stretched farther than it ever had before, like it was breathing, growing. Pictures on the walls no longer showed my family. They were blank now, or worse, moving. Smiling children with empty eyes stared out from behind glass. Some of them looked like me, and the whispers had gotten louder. They were calling my name, begging, crying. One of them whispered, "Don't let her stitch you too." I don't know how I made it to the laundry room. I slammed the door, locked it behind me, and jammed the ironing board against the handle. Then I collapsed on the floor, shaking. I wanted to scream, cry, break something, but I didn't, because I heard something. Scratching from inside the wall. No, not scratching, clawing. I backed up into the corner, and the wall started to pulse, like a heartbeat. Then, it cracked. A seam tore open along the drywall, and from it poured dolls, dozens of them, mouths sewn shut. Some were old, rotten, some were fresh. One still had a hospital bracelet. Another wore a cheerleading uniform I recognized from our local high school. They were twitching, crawling, trying to stand. One of them turned its head toward me and whispered, "Help us." That's when I saw the threads. black sticky strings running from their backs into the wall like marionette cords, controlling them, keeping them alive, or keeping them dead. I didn't think. I just grabbed the ironing board, swung it like a bat, and bashed open the tiny window above the dryer. The glass shattered. Cold night air rushed in. I didn't even hesitate. I squeezed through the opening, scraping my arms on the frame, and dropped onto the backyard grass. The wind hit me like a slap, and I ran down the street, barefoot, bleeding, sobbing. I ran straight to the old Miller house, 4 blocks over. They were the only neighbors I trusted. Mr. Miller answered the door in boxers and a wife beater, eyes wide. "Jesus, kid, what happened?" I tried to speak, but nothing came out. He pulled me inside, wrapped me in a blanket, and gave me cocoa. His wife called the police. I thought it was over. I thought I'd finally escaped, but I hadn't. Because when the police got there and we went back to my house, there was no Mrs. Wren, no suitcase, no dolls, no claw marks. My room was spotless, like I'd never lived there. Even the photo albums in the living room. My face had been cut out. My parents' voices were on the answering machine, but the messages were gone, wiped clean. The cops told Mr. Miller I was probably sleepwalking. Said I had an overactive imagination, but he didn't believe them. Not completely. Because when he tucked me into the guest bed, he said, "Whatever you saw, kid, it's not your fault." That night I dreamed of stitches. Thread pulling through my skin, and something wet crawling into my ear. When I woke up, the window was open, and on the pillow next to me was a doll with my face and a note pinned to its chest. "You can't hide from family." I stayed with the Millers for the next few days. Social services got involved. They called my parents' resort but couldn't reach them. I tried to tell the social worker what had happened, but she smiled politely and said, "You just miss your mommy and daddy." Nobody believed me until the 3rd night. That's when the birds came. Dozens of them. Black wrens. They smashed into the windows, scratched at the doors. They weren't like normal birds. They had human eyes. One had a tooth growing out of its beak. Mr. Miller tried to beat them away with a broom, but they didn't stop until sunrise. The backyard looked like a horror movie. Feathers, blood, broken beaks. That's when I knew. She'd found me. Mrs. Wren wasn't going to stop, because she never left things unfinished. And I was her project. I begged the Millers to take me to the police again. They did. But this time, when I told them the story, every detail, they just nodded slowly and left me in a waiting room. An hour later, a woman with kind eyes sat down next to me, introduced herself as Dr. Halloran, child psychologist. She wanted to talk. I didn't, but she kept pushing. Asked me about the dolls, asked about Mrs. Wren's songs. I hadn't told her about the songs. She smiled. "I've heard them too," she said. That's when I looked at her hands. Long fingers, too long, and a black thread looped around her pinky. She smiled wider. "You've been reading from the book, haven't you? That language, it binds things, opens doors, the kind that don't close." I ran again, out of the station, into the street. Didn't care where. Ended up hiding in a dumpster behind a bowling alley, shaking, breathing in rot and grease. That's where someone found me. But it wasn't the police. It was a boy, maybe 16. Hair buzzed short. Leather jacket with a patch on the arm. An eye sewn shut with thorns around it. He offered me water. Said his name was Micah. And he knew who I was. "You're the kid who saw her," he said. "Wren. She's one of the old kind. Been around since before cities. She feeds on memory and family. She stitches you into her life." He showed me his back, covered in scars, dozens of little X's. "She had me for 3 years," he said, "but I got out." I asked how. He said, "You can't fight her, but you can undo her. Tear out the seams. You just need the right tools." He handed me a small knife. The blade was black, jagged, and the hilt was wrapped in doll hair. "Cut the strings," he said. Then he was gone, just vanished into the alley. I went back to the house, my house, empty, quiet. The lights were off, but the attic light was glowing red through the vents. I stepped inside. Everything smelled like cinnamon and blood. The walls were covered in new wallpaper, stitched flesh. Pictures drawn in crayon. Me, Mrs. Wren, dolls, family. She was trying to replace my real family, rewrite my story. I climbed the stairs, one by one, knife in hand, and when I reached the attic door, it opened by itself. Inside Dash. Mrs. Wren was waiting, dressed like a bride. The veil of wrens perched on her head. Her smile was back, too wide. She held something in her arms. It was my mother, or what was left of her, stitched from pieces, face too smooth, eyes too wide. "I saved her for you," Mrs. Wren said. "I sewed her just the way you like." I ran at her, knife raised. But the moment I crossed the threshold, the attic floor collapsed, and I fell into the dark, into screaming, into a pit filled with dolls. They reached, pulled me down, and the last thing I saw was Mrs. Wren's face, leaning over the edge, smiling and whispering, "Now you'll stay forever."
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more horror tales.